Hi, I wanted to talk about the isolation I've experienced being autistic because it's something that feels so woven into the core of my being. I feel so inherently detached, not only from other people, but from myself. And I feel very detached from a world that was not built for me. It was not built for autistic people. And frankly, it really wasn't built for many people, period. Nobody knew I was autistic growing up, and so that definitely adds to the shame of it. My anxiety was just treated as social anxiety, and so a lot of the treatment I was receiving was not doing a whole lot, and I was very eager to do therapy. And so when I was using all of the skills and paying very close attention and it still wasn't working, I blamed myself, and I was blamed. I was experiencing tons of sensory issues that I didn't even realize were affecting me so heavily because I thought it was just normal. Fluorescent lights, especially, the amount of migraines I had, the world only ever felt like constant overstimulation, except I didn't have that word for it. And that, combined with being a very weird child and not having a lot of friends, made me very confused as to why I would even want to leave the house. Especially considering I was already going to school for 8 hours a day and then church on Sundays. And then I was told, I wasn't doing enough and I had to do clubs and stuff. I just felt this constant exhaustion. And I didn't know what was wrong with me and why I didn't want to do what other kids were doing. I didn't go to the mall with friends or anything. I wanted to be friends with a lot of teachers and authority figures, partially because of being rejected by my peers, but also I felt like I fit in with them more, which of course I couldn't actually be friends with any of them because that would be not good. So I couldn't have any people my age and I couldn't have any people older than me, so there was just no one. But I wanted to be the teacher's pet. I wanted to follow the rules because they were, to me, very easy to follow. I wasn't tempted to talk with friends during class because I didn't have any. And part of the rejection, too, I know, was because I believed the things that my parents told me to believe. Being evangelical, you're taught a very you versus the world mindset. Like, you will be persecuted for what you believe, which basically just means, yeah, people aren't gonna like you if you push negative beliefs. So because I was already so isolated at a young age, I didn't really have a good basis for how the world works and how people work. I could only really judge that off of things that I watched. Like, if you grew up on Nickelodeon, you're probably already a little weird, but imagine taking all of those things literally. So I simultaneously couldn't fit in with my family and I couldn't fit in with my peers. And the repeated rejection just pushed me further into myself, really compounded that shame. The kind of treatment I was receiving at the time, the gist of it was, keep putting yourself out there to challenge your social anxiety, which really never worked because it only reinforced the idea of my own off-puttingness. Because sure, I was doing it, I was talking to people, but nothing good really came from it. It feels really easy for autism to lead to agoraphobia. Agoraphobia being the fear of leaving your house or the fear of crowded spaces, places where you can't easily escape. I just don't understand how it would have been possible for me to not develop it. Nothing about the outside world was good to me. And to be fair, nothing at home was very good either, but at least I had my room. And of course, the only support the church ever gave me regarding that was, be not afraid. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Thanks, I'm cured. There was definitely a lot of suppression of my emotions because no one around me seemed to be struggling in the ways that I was struggling. And after a while, my continued mental illness was mostly just seen as a burden. The only person to help me was me, and at that point, I hated myself. The people who I had the most in common with were the people I was with at hospitals, because I finally met people who were struggling as much as I was. But of course, you're not really allowed to be friends with them. After you leave, you're not supposed to share numbers or anything like that, which I do. I understand why I do. And I had a horrible time at those places anyway. They also didn't help. And I understand it from the perspective of keeping you from harming yourself or others. That's important. But there was zero healing in those places. In fact, I think it just made a lot of things worse. There was a lot of relief in finally finding out I was autistic, but there still really wasn't much connection coming from that, because obviously autism is a spectrum and you're not going to have stuff in common with every autistic person. But the thing that struck me the most was the difference I had in autistic people who were more extroverted, because at one point I might have had more in common with them. Or I mean that I did like them and I was drawn to them, but by that point I had censored myself so much and erased so many parts of myself that I didn't know how to act around them. I think I fell in this middle place where people definitely knew something was off with me, but I wasn't visibly autistic. So I wasn't getting the support that I saw people with higher needs autism getting, and that immediate recognition of, oh, I understand why you're different. And at the same time, it also seemed there were autistic people who were doing way better than me, at least on the surface, I don't know their lives. And of course, higher needs autistic people have plenty of their own struggles. It was just like everywhere I turned, there was a reason why I didn't fit. Becoming an adult was terrifying because I was doing the worst I had ever done, and now I was expected to be able to handle all of these other responsibilities. Learning to drive was extremely stressful, especially because of how direct instruction I needed while driving. And even now that I'm more comfortable with driving, it's still very overstimulating. And I had no idea what I was going to do for a job because everything terrified me. My first job was as a cashier, and every morning before that, my heart was racing and I was sweating and nauseous. Again, I was thrown into a situation with very hostile people. I'll just say what it was. I was a cashier at CVS in 2020. Probably the worst position I could have chosen. But then again, I didn't really choose it. They just were the ones that answered me back. And of course, my parents thought it would be good for me to have that socialization. There have definitely been cases where people with social anxiety or something like that, they've gone into a job that has forced them to be more social, and it allowed them to get better at it. This was absolutely not the case for me. Again, the things that I was already struggling with were made infinitely worse. It definitely contributed to my worsening agoraphobia. When people talk about exposure therapy like that, and they don't know a lot about how it works, they tend to recommend things that are way out of the league of the person who is struggling. And at that point in my life, and my entire life really, I needed a safe environment to be in so I could heal, and I didn't have that. And even now that things are better, I never want to be a cashier. I never want to do a customer-facing job ever. There is no situation in which that would make things better for me. I just felt so trapped because even after I moved out, I was still forced into really toxic environments. I am not compatible with capitalism, and at the end of the day, I don't really think anyone is. The higher and higher up you go, you realize the worst people are the ones who are in charge. Managers who have never worked a day on the floor telling you what to do. Life was genuine hell for me, and there's so much more I could go into, but I won't. I do also want to mention the isolation that I feel from my body. I feel very trapped inside this meat suit that I didn't get to choose. This thing bleeds and oozes and shits. There is so much pain and uncomfortability that it feels. If I look at my hands too long, I start to question why I have fucking sticks. I've always wished that I could be like a tree or a bird, or to maintain my brain and my soul but not have to have a physical body. And then being trans adds a whole other layer to that. And the fact that you're treated so differently for having a specific kind of body. I never understood why I had to shave hair that naturally grew on my legs or paint my face. The idea of pregnancy is genuine body horror. That's great for the people who want that, but it's my actual nightmare. Dissociation has always been in my life, it feels like. From depersonalization, not feeling like me, not feeling connected to my body, derealization, feeling like everything around me is some kind of hazy dream. Even at 5 years old, feeling very conscious of the fact that I was being treated like a kid and just sort of waiting for the moment when I would be treated like everyone else. And I think that disconnection from myself has been the worst form of isolation. Because if you don't even have yourself, then what do you have? I think like a lot of people who feel isolated, I took to the internet, which did substitute that connection for a while, and I'm grateful for it. But at the same time, it also caused many of its own problems. Because censoring myself and filtering myself saved me in a lot of situations, I continued to do that, just now through the addition of the opinions of everyone online, which is impossible considering everyone has contradicting opinions. I just had no sense of self, no set of beliefs that I could strictly adhere to. I had no idea what I believed about anything, because I would find one person's opinion and be like, oh yeah, that sounds right, but then I'd find someone else saying the opposite and be like, well, that sounds right too. I wasn't able to discern anything through my own lens because I had no self-lens. It was just, how can I best please everyone simultaneously? It's been hard for me to not bash my younger selves. I did what I needed to do to survive, but I feel like I was formed into a very unlikable person. I resent the way that I was shaped, and I resent my ability to be so easily shaped. It just seemed that I was lied to my entire life. There were so many rules and expectations that just weren't actually real. And when I operated by them, it made me even more of an outcast. So yeah, I feel like I should end this more positively. I've had the time and the space now for healing. I feel much more myself than I've ever been, and I've been able to find genuine enjoyment out of life, even though I still often look around and go, this is the bad place. I just wanted to share my experience with this specific kind of isolation, because I think pretty much everyone is feeling isolated, especially right now. We're more connected than we've ever been, and yet we're also way further apart. So yeah, I'm gonna stick around to watch myself make my life better. That's the plan. Thank you to my tier 2 member / patron, Ekachu. Now leave. Go away.